wanted to be. But Paul's saying this is an event of a new mindset, of a new mantra for daily living. That this whole event was showing us how we might learn to really live. Not by power and might, which is always around us, but by a revolutionary thing called love. You see, it's a mysterious, insane, awesome kind of story when you think about it. One we really can't wrap and get our heads around. And Paul wanted the Philippians to understand that this was just not an event. This was a life-changing world happening. You see, God and God's infinite wisdom, once chaos had settled a little bit, decided that God wanted to be more than just that God. So God decided to empty God's self out from what the people thought to the point that God became a baby in Bethlehem. You see, it's a full story. A star and an unbelievable baby comes to a stable, as we understand it. And next week will end when even death doesn't have a hold on us. For Paul, it was more important to understand that this is a story about God. This is a story about God so we fully understand what God's like. Jesus is not in the image of God. Jesus is in the form of God. An opportunity to experience a physical presence of God among us. We still do that today because He chooses to use some of us to represent that form with others. This was a big deal. It was funny watching us this morning. We got into it. We enjoyed being kids again, didn't we? Yes. It was fun. It was new. That's what it's all about, folks. We have an opportunity because of a very strange, awesome, mystical, misunderstood event to be different than what we are. To become like Jesus so that we quit worrying about ourselves. I never can get this expression right, and I hope I can. We got to quit worrying about ourselves. Well, I'll think of it in a minute. The point is, don't put yourself first. Think of yourself less due to someone else. You're not really taking away the respect you have for yourself. You're just learning to think less about yourself. I got it. That's what I wanted. Thinking less about yourself. That's through the mind, and that's how Christ lived. Christ had the ability to meet with people and accept their story. If we were to have to go around this room and tell what we think someone's story is, how many of them do you think we'd get right? Probably not any, would we? We have an image of what we want that person to be, and much of us have an image we want you to think is us. But the reality is, do we take time? Are we in a safe enough environment that we can really tell our story? And that was the key to Jesus. He met people where they were. Where they were. Not where He wanted them to be necessarily. Other than the Pharisees and the religious folks. He tried to get them straight, but that didn't work. They didn't want to listen. But for folks who've come to know that life is just not what I thought it could be or hoped it would be, realize that now there's a way it can be. We quit worrying about doing good things so people will think we're good people. We do them because it's just our nature. We do good things for people not to get credit. Because when you do something to get credit, you've lost the whole meaning. Getting credit and doing good aren't necessarily compatible. Jesus was obedient. That says a lot right there. We have the story of what we call the first Adam. The first Adam, immediately, like us, disobeyed God. That wasn't even in Jesus' mindset. The first Adam was given dominion over all the earth. Jesus represents all of creation. Being obedient takes intentionality. It takes self-understanding. And it takes knowing that your purpose is greater than what's happening around you. Jesus' mindset is so different, isn't it? It's one that's so different than the world we live in. And it's very hard for us to not get caught up in what's being told around us. How much do you make? Where do you live? What do you do? We don't ever ask people anymore, how are you really? We go in, and if we're at a party or something, we go, what do you do? I loved it when I was retired. I could say nothing. It stops the conversation. I mean, what do you say to somebody who says they're doing nothing? But it also opens the door. So you can tell the story of what it means to finally learn how to be a person instead of doing something. Now I realize here I stand as the antithesis. I'm no longer doing nothing. Or some of you may disagree with that. But the reality is that Jesus takes us where we are. And Jesus will allow us, wherever we are, to be who we are so that others might see the love of God in us. So as we begin Holy Week, and as we think about this week being the full story, from God emptying God's self into a baby and then dying horrific death to show us that nothing will ever separate us from the love of God. My question for all of us is, I gave you the context. One group on one side cheering what they thought was power coming in, but it was really love. One group over here cheering exactly what they knew was power, but they were wrong. Which side of town are you on? Think about it.